we go into this, man. I haven't exactly seen the man. I need to catch up. I haven't seen any of the Hard Knocks. I've been behind. I need to really jump in.
I haven't either. And the Cowboys are like my NFC team, so I feel like I'm betraying them. But I haven't jumped in on them yet. I work some nights, so that complicates things. But that's no excuse. I got to dive in. I've heard it's okay. Like the thing I've heard the most is that like Jerry Jones ordered a McGriddle from McDonald's and then got it and then just dumped more salt on it. Like he's like, it needs more salt, and he took a salt shaker and he just dumped it on that McGriddle. And that's my best Jerry accent, so I apologize.
That's the most Texas thing I've ever heard in my life. If there's anything that represents Texas, it's getting a McGriddle and throwing a shit ton of salt on it. I don't know. It's just weird. Throw your Texas jokes, by the way. If you have some good Texas jokes, throw them in the chat. I want to see your best Texas jokes. Jerry Jones jokes. Let's have some fun with it. I mean, obviously, we're putting salt on McGriddles these days, so that's a thing.
McDonald's doesn't salt their food anymore. You got to add the salt.
Yeah, it's different, man. But let's dive in, man. We got some AFC South. Let's touch on the AFC South first. Get into it. Then we'll dive into the NFC. Cover each and every team's chances of making it out of their division. And then also we'll talk about maybe some of the key additions, subtractions, maybe some of the different aspects of their training camp, that there might be some good playoff or some preseason camp battles between some different positions. But we have a couple divisions here that we want to touch on. So let's start out AFC South. And AFC South, as far as just the odds go to win this division, we have let me pull these up real quick. Tennessee Titans are the favorite in this division, which is a no-brainer, right? Everyone knew that this was going to be the Tennessee Titans division to lose. So they are minus 135 at this FanDuel Sportsbook is where we have them currently, minus 135. So that means you have to bet $135 to win $100. So just keep that in mind. You're losing a little bit, but you're betting on the favorite. You have a good chance of winning. The rest of the odds throughout the division, Indianapolis Colts are second place in this, plus 175. The Jags are plus 600 with their rookie quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. And the Houston Texans, the lowly Houston Texans, come in at a whopping fourth, plus 2,300, plus 2,300. I would say that's not great value, even if you win, because it's not going to happen. It's great. I guess it's value if you win, but it's just not going to happen. You're just betting on a long shot that's no way close. So let's go into projected win totals here. Indianapolis Colts, or let's just start at the top. Tennessee Titans. 9 total wins are projected for Tennessee. Now, Tennessee in this division ended up finishing, let's see. Let me double check where they were last year. 9-7. So they're around the...
No, they were not 9-7.
Oh, my bad. I have an old thing here. Well, where were they at?
I could be. There's no way they were 9-7. They had to be like 11-5. And I don't even know what they were, but they were 9-7.
Hold on one second.
BS on that right now.
No,
I'm looking forward to.
Anyways, they're projected 9 total wins this year. So they're gonna be in that same category. Let me see here.
I got it. They finished 11-5.
11-5. So they're taking a step back here from what they were last year. So, not going to be the best, but they did get some key additions there. We'll dive into those in a minute. The rest of these, we have projected total wins for Houston is 4. We got Jacksonville at 6.5 and 8.5 for the Indianapolis Colts. So that's where we're at with the win totals here. Now, which team do we want to start out with when it comes to just breaking down a little bit of AFC South football?
Let's start with the team that never gets started, the Jacksonville Jaguars, for fun. Let's start with
the Jags. Okay.
You're not even happy about that. We had to address we're going to address them all. We got to I'm getting it out of the way for you.
All I have to say is Tim Tebow. That's all. So Tim Tebow obviously is the big story here. Second rate is Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence is the big talk here coming into camp, trying to figure out whether or not he's going to be something that's going to come in and be able to take the reins here in the AFC South and do something, right? Now, this team isn't void of talent. They have some, decent weapons around. DJ Chark, which I've seen some things that maybe people are fading him a little bit this year, but an okay wide receiver core. They have an okay defense that's, competitive here and there throughout the course of the season. But as far as, their chances, I mean, the odds to make the playoffs are plus 330, so it's not great. They're not projected to get anywhere big this season. I think the growth is going to be with their young talent and how they build around Trevor Lawrence. However, they do have some chance to maybe win some games this year and be competitive in a handful of these. With the division, you have Houston below you. Indianapolis could be, depending on injuries and things they have going on with Carson Wentz, they could be they could be in maybe some trouble where Jacksonville might creep up on them. I don't see that happening, but you never know, right? So, what do you think with Jacksonville here, Scotty?
First of all, 6.5, the over/under. Let's keep in mind this is a team that won one game last year. Hey, we got another follow.
Oh,
appreciate it.
JM Stemper. Thanks for following. We are on our way. Let's go. And Chipotle BTC. Let's go. We hit our follower goal for the first time, guys. Let's go. Love it.
We did it.
Hey, guys. Appreciate the love. Thank you so much.
We're going to close the show down now because it's downhill for me now.
Mic drop. We're done. Cut the show. Yeah. No, go.
Appreciate it, guys. Back to the Jags and dive in. Anyone who just followed us, feel free in the chat. We love having conversations in the chat. It feeds us. It allows us to have a better time. That way I don't have to talk to Chris the whole time. So I appreciate it, and I'm sure he does too, so he doesn't have to talk to me the whole time either. So thanks for the follow. Hop in that chat and give us your thoughts on why we're right, why we're wrong. More importantly, why we're wrong, because we very well could be. So Jags, the big storyline now that Tebow's out is Trevor Lawrence. 6.5 wins is a lot to me for a team that won one game. They started out 1-0 and lost their last 15. So they're on a 15-game losing streak. You don't see that in the NFL very often. You're right. They do have weapons. They're weird, and they had James Robinson, who was the best rookie running back in the NFL stats-wise last year. And, of course, they go and draft Travis Etienne out of Clemson early on in the draft to I don't know if that's replaced James Robinson or at least, have a split backfield with those two. They added Carlos Hyde. They signed Carlos Hyde, the vet, in the offseason. You talked about wide receiver DJ Chark. They do have Laviska Shenault from the Buffs, along with Marvin Jones Jr. So they got some pieces. The offensive line's a work in progress, and the defense is a big-time work in progress. They got a couple pieces. Miles Jack is nice. Josh Allen rushing the quarterback's nice. Everywhere else is pretty much a piecing together and a work in progress. So 6.5 is a lot of wins for me. They're clearly not in a position where I think they're playoff ready. That's going to take at least another year to kind of mold this together and let Trevor Lawrence get his feet under him. Because, he's playing. Let's be honest. He's going to play. He's going to start. And we'll see how Urban Meyer in his first time as an NFL coach does. A lot of those college guys haven't always transitioned well to the NFL. Some have, but more often than not, they have not. So we'll see how that transition goes for him. So they'll be an interesting team to watch and see how they progress. But still at least a year or two away from being a legit playoff team in this AFC.
Yeah, I agree. And the team that they have a chance to catch here in this division is the Indianapolis Colts. Finished 11-5 in their 2020 campaign. And there's a chance that they can potentially make a move here. Obviously, The biggest pieces that were added for Indianapolis this year, just by the way, so they're projected. They were 11-5 last year. Their AFC South projection win total is 8-5. So they're taking a little step back from where they were last year. That's maybe partly because of Carson Wentz injury. Who knows how that's going to affect him over the course of the season. They say he's going to come back week 1, but how that affects him, I mean, he's already not 100% coming into the regular season. So that'll be interesting to see what ends up happening there. But one of the important position battles here is pass rusher. If draft picks worked like pieces, Kwity Paye, he would snap right into place on this one. So that would be, a big add, because they had departures of Justin Houston and Danico Autry. So, they need to fill those holes. So, the Colts had a really good defense last year. Now, they're projected to have a decent defense this year, but how Kwity Paye kind of jumps in and is able to make an immediate impact is going to be interesting as well. But Carson Wentz is the big story here. Quarterback, we might not ultimately learn in camp what to think about this new fit, because he's obviously hurt. He's going to be coming back maybe week 1. But, as far as, his consistency and what he could bring to this team, protect him, because he wasn't getting a lot of protection in Philadelphia, where he, had a little bit of issue with getting sacked quite a bit. That's going to be a big thing too. He has time to throw the ball, so we'll see how he ends up handling that and managing that, game to game. But Scotty, what do you think here about the Indianapolis Colts?
I feel like the Colts came in, they got injuries at the start of their camp, and everyone's just been down on them ever since. Wentz went down, Quentin Nelson, their all-pro left guard, went down. Maybe the best left guard in the game. And ever since, people have just been like, no, I'm out on the Colts. The Colts are going to suck. And we're not sure. Those two guys could be back week 1. They could not. It might take a few weeks, but this is a team that has Frank Reich as coach. Love him. He's done a tremendous job. Has proven to lead them to win. And let's be honest. Are we sure with Phillip Rivers last year they had a good quarterback? I'm not certain they had a good quarterback in their system last year. How good was Phillip Rivers in his, he had no arm strength. He might know where to go with the ball at times, but he can't always deliver. Obviously Carson Wentz has a ton more arm strength, maybe not the intangibles and the smarts and the knowledge that Phillip Rivers brings. I don't love Carson Wentz by any means. I think he made a lot of mistakes and was a bit of a disaster in Philadelphia, especially last year. But he's got talent. He's got the ability, if he can piece it together and figure it out with the right coaching. They have Jonathan Taylor, the second half of last year, was one of the best running backs in the game, and I think he's a guy that we need to talk about more fantasy wise in running back position. I think he easily could be a top 5 running back in fantasy this year. Coming into his second year after taking a little time to get acclimated in the first half of last year. He dominated the second half. They still have T.Y. Hilton. At this point, I don't know, is he 800 years old? Because he's been in Indy, it seems like, since Peyton started his career. So it's a little wild.
How T.Y. Hilton he's going to be the Tom Brady of wide receivers in this league. He's going to be in the league for 50 years. And he's never going to go away.
Yeah, and if Quentin Nelson's healthy on the offensive line, this is a really good offensive line that could get better if Eric Fisher, who they actually signed, the left tackle from the Chiefs, since he was the number 1 pick years ago, who tore his Achilles in the AFC Championship game. So he's not going to be ready to go to start the year, but if he comes back at some point, that offensive line, if they piece it together, is really, really good with some Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Braden Smith, all really, really, really good offensive linemen. Defense played well at times last year, got overmatched against really good talent. I worry about the pass rush. They lost Justin Houston, who actually played well last year. DeForest Buckner is still going to be a force in the interior, and they signed Darius Leonard to a big deal, I believe, or they're waiting to, at the linebacker spot. Secondary is okay, not elite, but solid enough. So this is a team that I think people are too down on. I think they heard about the injuries and they're like, now we're out on the Colts. I think they're well coached. I think they have the ability to make things happen. I wouldn't rule out them winning the division, and I certainly think, I don't know. 8.5 seems low to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I feel like they're locked into that second spot there, though. They're the better team over Jacksonville, over Houston, which we're going to touch on here in a second. But yeah, for some reason, we'll see how this team ends up looking at, because this team could surprise people a little bit. So let's talk about Houston, though. Houston, the train wreck that Houston is. Houston has a lot of they have a lot of question marks, man. Do they have a roster? Are they fielding a team this year?
I think and I'll dive into what I mean by this, but I think they just have running backs on this roster.
And which is one of the more important running back battles in this camp. So, let's dive into the running backs. You have Houston, who added 2 former 1,000-yard rushers in Mark Ingram, and Phillip Lindsay, along with a player who's averaged 88 touches over the past 5 seasons, is Rex Burkhead. They have actually a nice little running back core there that
and they still have David Johnson.
Like
every other NFL team has figured out maybe devalue the running back position a little bit. It's more about blocking, it's more about your passing game that opens up the running game. No, the Texans this offseason were like, fuck it, we're going all in, we're doing this. We are stacking the running back position. And what's funny about when I say stacking, none of these guys you'd consider elite at the position, but they're all they have 4 guys that are all fine, and I don't know what they're doing. Phillip Lindsay, Mark Ingram, David Johnson, Rex Burkhead. Okay, obviously Phillip Lindsay and Mark Ingram are very different running backs. One's bigger, one's little, one's it's more of a scat back, and Phillip Lindsay. Mark Ingram's more of your bruiser, run over guys. So I'm fine with a split thing, but you still had David Johnson, who was pretty solid last year. Rex Burkhead's shown that he can, be somewhat productive at least. So I don't know what they're doing, man. And we haven't even brought up the fact that their quarterback position is a disaster.
They're building running backs like they're drafting their fantasy football team this year. All running backs in the first round. Or in the first 3 rounds. Gold Glover, how was the stream, my friend? Thanks for popping in. Let's go. What's up? We're doing good, man. We're just getting into some of these divisions. I heard you were covering some. I was in your stream a little bit earlier. You were covering the NFC North and having some good conversations, man. It was fire. Yeah, it was fire, man. I was having a good time. But glad you're able to pop in. With supporting each other's channels. It's a lot of fun, man. Great to see you back in. So, going back to this team here, that's all they have is running backs. You have, a little bit of a quarterback issue based off of what's going to happen here with, who's going to play quarterback? Is there going to be some suspension for, the quarterback role here in Houston, based off of all the things that are happening off the field? It's going to be interesting to see. But he hasn't been able to be on the field in the first place with all of the issues on. Deshaun Watson hasn't been able to play because of COVID. He hasn't been able to play because of other
No, all of these things are made up in my mind. It's just reasons because he doesn't want to be out there. While he's also there's going to be a grand jury. He's being investigated by the FBI now. There's so much over his head. Weeks ago when we were previewing QBs, and I was like, hey, if you don't love your QB because you wait on him and you're not sure about him, you could always pull a flyer in the late rounds and draft Deshaun Watson, hoping at some point he comes back. I don't know how he comes back this year. There's so much looming over his head. He is the only reason this team is competitive at all. Their defense is a dumpster fire of dumpster fires. It's so bad. It's so bad. Name me a guy that would start on almost any other team. I'm looking. They have Eric Murray as their starting strong safety. Listen, he was on the Chiefs. He's garbage. He never started for the Chiefs. He wasn't good. You look at it and it's awful. Their defense was awful last year. It's gonna be awful this year, and their offense isn't going to make up for it. You have Brandon Cooks. He's good for maybe 8 games a year. They signed Chris Conley, who's average at best, another former Chief. I don't know, man. They are a mess. They will compete for being the worst team in the league this year, especially if Deshaun Watson doesn't play like like at this point. I'm kind of leaning that he just won't play this year for any team, and that's going to be the reality. So they're looking at Tyrod Taylor, who's fine, but
or Jeff Driscoll.
Not. There's no. If Jeff Driscoll beats out Tyrod Taylor, I don't know what you're saying.
It's a nightmare. And then that all of a sudden that 4, so they're projected 4 wins. They finished 4-12 last year. All of a sudden you're like, I mean, I'll take the under. I'll take the under on all of that.
I mean, 4 with an added game, so we're looking at 7. They're projecting them to go 4-13. That's awful. And I bet more bets are coming in on the under. Because everyone just hates this roster.
I would bet the under. I mean, this.
I can't bet the under on 4 because, listen, there's other bad teams or injuries can happen. Or what if Deshaun Watson all of a sudden plays the second half? I would listen. I'm not saying when we go the over unders, I won't take the under, but I'm not gonna bet it. I'm not gonna bet this one because there's too much unknown with Deshaun Watson, and if he comes back somehow, they're probably gonna get over those 4 wins, even though they only won 4 with Deshaun last year. But,
Sure.
I don't know. This roster needs a lot of work, and I don't. Dave Coley, their new head coach, I have zero confidence in.
Yeah, I don't either. It's going to be rough. Gold Glover, we didn't even get to the East. Tomorrow we will get into the East, though. Yeah. All right. Nice, man. Can't wait for that show. And let's get the final. Little team here, and it's the highlight of this entire division, and that is the Tennessee Titans. So finished 11-5 last season. Coming into this season, projected at 9. So I mean, still,
is that weird? Is that weird? The favorite in a division is projected. Their over unders at 9.
It's a little weird.
Crazy. That's crazy low.
It's a little weird
for a team that I think people love, especially after the Julio Jones signing. To only be at 9 is suspicious to me.
For a team that has Derrick Henry, one of the most prolific runners in the league, for a team that added Julio Jones, in the offseason. I mean, it seems like you're more optimistic about this team than you were last year, and yet they're projected less wins. So figure that one out. That's kind of interesting, right?
You know who their starting right tackle is right now?
Is it Ty Sambrailo?
It sure is. Do you remember him?
Oh, I remember Ty Sambrailo really well because he played like shit for the Broncos. Yep. And
he was a Ram, though.
He is a Rammy. So
CSU, Colorado State Ram.
That doesn't mean he's not shit in the NFL.
yeah, it's concerning.
So it's not great. And that's one of the biggest battles here is the right tackle position in camp. So trying to figure out, how they're going to be able to protect Ryan Tannehill. And obviously, they were really good offensively, but they weren't very good defensively, I don't think. From what I could remember, they gave up a lot of points. Like, they weren't exactly great on the defensive side of the football, which you can't outscore teams. Like, when you get into the Kansas City Chiefs, you try to outscore them, well, guess what's going to happen? You're going to get blown out. But
why is that? Who would blow you out?
Drink. I'm not even gonna. Okay, y'all let you mention it. So yeah, there's gonna be some interesting pieces here. They have some pieces. Caleb Farley, first round pick, underwent surgery in March. Hopefully he can get a little bit better and try to come back.
A little beat up.
Otherwise,
he's legit, but he's started playing in camp. I saw a clip of him today. Match up single wide on Mike Evans. They were practicing with the Bucks, and it was a play where he shut Mike Evans down. Where it didn't look like Mike Evans was also trying that hard, so I thought it was like an overrated clip. But he's a piece. Their secondary was awful, and to their credit, they're trying to. They've kind of outside of Kevin Byard. I'm terrible at saying his name. The safety who's really good. They're trying to fill that gap in the secondary with guys. They signed Janoris Jenkins, who's been around the block and been around a long time, but has had some seasons where he's been really, really good and some where he's been inconsistent. Christian Fulton was a corner that, and I think he's going into his second year at LSU. Talented guy. We'll see what happens with him. So that secondary is the big question mark on defense. They have some nice pieces with, Rashawn Evans at linebacker, Bud Dupree they added in the offseason. You have Jeffrey Simmons, the D tackle, who's a beast. They list him in 3-4 as left defensive end, but he plays on the inside. So they have some pieces along that line in the second level. That secondary is going to be where they live or die, and they at least knew they couldn't live with who they had last year. So a lot of guys who had been there a long time, like your Logan Ryan, things like that, they said goodbye to, and they're going to at least go a little younger and see what happens. Obviously, offensively, their big addition, Julio Jones, who's been not playing a ton in camp. They're kind of resting him. Julio Jones healthy and at his peak is a monster. Like that combo with AJ Brown, I talked about all last year. You know how much I love AJ.
You love AJ Brown.
I love me some AJ Brown. And then I'm not talking fantasy or anything like that. I'm just talking as a wide receiver. That dude's a monster and a beast, and is he's a top 5 wide receiver in the league, and he doesn't get that pub in my mind. So I love AJ Brown. Obviously, you got your Derrick Henry and Tannehill. As long as that run game's working out, is going to be able to hit the passes to whether it's AJ Brown or Julio Jones. They got Josh Reynolds. They obviously lost their tight end who went to New England, and I'm drawing a blank on his name right now, but he wasn't just a dominant piece for them. So I don't know. 9 is suspiciously low to me. That's weird, especially in a division where you have 2 teams perceived as being pretty bad in Jacksonville and Houston. That's almost if they can beat those 2 teams twice, that's 4 wins right there. So Vegas is smart. They make money for a reason. I have to feel like people are pouring on the over on this. And I am going to do some more research before we talk about that in a show we do later where we go over every over under and who we like.
Yep.
Because 9 for the Titans seems crazy low.
That's what I thought too. So we'll see what ends up happening. But Tennessee, this is their division to lose. I don't think they end up losing. I think they end up taking this